Does one artist turn her deepest, most personal heartbreaks into universal art that generates billions of dollars? The answer lies not just in music, but in the genius of her pen. The music industry constantly labeled her the vengeful ex-girlfriend who only writes about her past lovers. But she took that criticism and answered with the mastery of a Pulitzer-winning novelist. This is the story of Taylor Swift, the pop music behemoth who proved she is simultaneously the most powerful commercial force and the most talented, ruthlessly honest storyteller of her generation. Yet what makes Taylor Swift's story extraordinary is not merely her ability to write about heartbreak, it is her capacity to recode human emotion into economic and cultural currency. In a world where feelings are often dismissed as weakness, she weaponized vulnerability. Swift proved that sincerity, when paired with structure and precision, can be the most valuable resource in the creative economy. The power of the pop star's pen. In our previous analyses, we explored Taylor Swift's financial might, her copyright war, and her economic impact. But what lies at the foundation of this colossal empire? The answer is not in the studios, it is on the paper. This independent story is a deep dive into the pen and the pain, inside Taylor Swift's masterclass in emotional songwriting. We dissect the literary techniques she employs throughout her career, scrutinizing her artistic evolution from country fairy tales to indie/folk dramas. We will analyze her unique ability to transform metaphors, ironies, and moments of instant pain into universal art. The true secret to her success is not just being honest, but the discipline of forging personal pain into exquisite craftsmanship. From country tales to pop templates, early mastery Taylor Swift's songwriting journey began in the traditional storytelling of country music. Her early albums were three-act, vividly narrated short films centered around small-town teenage romances, heartbreaks, and high school drama. This simple, intimate narrative instantly made listeners feel connected. Her early genius lay in the use of specific details, particulars, like the time of a date, the color of a t-shirt, or the instant tension of a phone call, elevated her songs from mere emotional reflections into tangible stories that fans felt they were living inside. This craftsmanship gave the listener the feeling of, "This is my story." As she transitioned from country to mainstream pop, e.g., the 1989 album, the songwriting format changed. It became sharper, more minimalist, and focused on catchier, more radio-friendly melodies, yet she never abandoned the power of storytelling during this commercial shift. She maintained lyrical integrity despite commercial pressure. Lyrical weaponry. Art over vengeance. The greatest criticism throughout Taylor Swift's career was the accusation that her songs were vengeance-driven and exposed her former relationships. The media attempted to label her with the vengeful ex-girlfriend cliché. Swift's response to these critics was to use words as an artistic weapon. Instead of succumbing to the simple spite critics expected, Swift took these personal dramas and imbued them with literary depth. She processed the complexity of her relationships, the pain of betrayal, and public shaming, transforming the events of her personal life into universal themes. She was not just talking about ex-boyfriends, she was narrating the experience of womanhood under public scrutiny. This lyrical armament transformed her from a gossip subject into an epic narrator. Her fans saw her not just as an emotional supporter, but as a hero, making shrewd moves, capable of answering her detractors through her art. This positioned her as a powerful intellectual figure with the ability to counter criticism artistically. What critics failed to recognize was that every accusation, every tabloid headline, became raw material for her next act of creation. Each wound turned into a verse, each betrayal a bridge. Through this cycle, Taylor Swift built not just a discography, she built an emotional ecosystem where pain was recycled into empowerment, and the audience found their own reflection within her recovery. Narrative shift, indie/folk transformation, and pseudonyms. Taylor Swift reached her most creative and surprising career turning point with the Folklore and Evermore albums. This shift into indie/folk waters signaled her pursuit of recognition as a critical artist beyond the title of pop queen. In these albums, Swift's writing soared to a completely different level. She moved away from her own autobiographical stories, focusing instead on third-person narratives and imaginary characters. She created complex figures like James, Betty, and Augustine, transforming her songs into collections of short stories. This literary technique proved that the artist was deliberately moving away from personal gossip and focusing on her craft. Her use of the pseudonym William Bowery with Phineas during this time cemented her creative freedom. This pseudonym allowed her to escape the pressure of Taylor Swift's expectations from fans and media. Under an unknown name, the artist could act purely based on artistic merit. This was an ingenious solution to the constraints imposed by her own fame. The bridge, emotional engineering (EN). Perhaps the most important structural tool in Taylor Swift's songwriting is the skillfully constructed bridge section, which sets up the emotional peak. While bridges in pop music are typically simple melodic transitions, in Swift songs, they are the climax of emotional explosion, reckoning, and lyrical honesty. In many of her hit songs, e.g., All Too Well, Cruel Summer, the bridge is the moment where the most personal and raw emotions of the song are poured out. These sections not only build musical tension, but are also the lyrical points where all the plot points of the story are resolved, the moments where listeners say, "This is why I love her." This is not ordinary songwriting. It is emotional engineering. The bridges are the most shared, analyzed, and referenced parts within her fan base. These sections capture Taylor Swift's emotional complexity, deepening the personal connection the audience has with her. This mastery explains why her songs are not just hits, but cultural monuments. Content management and the "from the vault" strategy. In the copyright war we discussed previously, the deliberate release of from the vault tracks proved another facet of Taylor Swift's writing genius. These tracks not only provided new material but showcased her writing ability from different periods of her career. Vault tracks are typically songs that were either too emotionally raw or too lyrically personal to be included on the original album. By releasing them, Taylor provided fans with a new context for past events. For instance, the $10 version of All Too Well on the Red, Taylor's version album, revealed the full depth and pain of a relationship that the media had previously overlooked. This strategy proved that every lyrical fragment Taylor Swift holds possesses potential cultural and commercial value. The act of controlling and rewriting her own past transformed her writing ability into a capital asset independent of any middlemen or record labels. Legacy. The power of emotional commerce. Taylor Swift's mastery of songwriting is the direct source of her financial success and cultural power. She took her deepest personal pains and assigned them a universal artistic value. This artistic integrity is the main factor guaranteeing fan loyalty and generating a multi-billion-dollar economy. Her legacy teaches young artists not only to be honest, but also how to apply honesty masterfully. Songwriting for Taylor Swift ceased to be an emotional outlet and transformed into the most powerful and invincible weapon against traditional industry powers. She is the modern Homer, a storyteller who not only creates her own epic, but retains every word, every line, and every copyright of that saga. The absolute power of the pen Taylor Swift songwriting story reminds us that art is superior to commerce. Her genius lies not in producing #1 hits, but in the ability to transform even the deepest emotional realities into flawless literary craftsmanship. Her struggle, her music, and the control she ultimately achieved redefine the power of an artist as a figure who battles traditional structures, gets rich through her pen, and remains the sole master of her own narrative. This is the legacy Taylor Swift leaves us. Pain is inevitable, but the ability to transform that pain into a universal masterpiece is in your hands. In centuries past, empires were built on swords and steel. In the 21st century, they are built on words and emotion. Taylor Swift's pen became both her sword and her shield, the instrument through which she conquered an industry and rewrote the mythology of modern fame. Long after the charts have changed and the headlines have faded, her true monument will remain the written line, a map of how art can turn suffering into immortality. The global resonance of literary genius, the intellectual defense of emotion. Taylor Swift's songwriting genius lies not just in recounting personal experiences, but in utilizing these narratives as a tool for intellectual self-defense. As the industry repeatedly attempted to demean her with the, quote, vengeful ex-girlfriend stereotype, She took that very cliché and armored herself with a lyrical counteroffensive. This is not merely a pop music maneuver. It is a profound literary challenge that declares the artist's absolute sovereignty over her public narrative. The songs born from her deepest pain are meticulously crafted through a process of emotional engineering. Swift presents emotions like rage, betrayal, or shame, not in their raw state but distilled through universal metaphors and complex narrative structures. For instance, the concrete country-style details in her early work, like Chevy trucks and little black dresses, immediately generate a feeling of shared nostalgia and familiarity. In her subsequent pop era, this specific detail work transforms into internal monologue and rhetorical devices. The intense, almost breathless confession in a all-too-well bridge acts as a catalyst for the listener to relive the climax of their own personal traumas. This skillfully shifts the audience from passive consumers to active participants in the narrative. Swift's use of the pseudonym William Bowery and her pivot to third-person narratives with the Folklore/Evermore albums attest to her pursuit of artistic validation beyond personal drama. By creating fictional characters, she successfully maintained her emotional truth while distancing herself from her own life. This move reframed the critic's question from, "Who is this song about?" to the more enduring, "Why does this story feel so familiar?" She thus evolved from mere tabloid fodder into a collective conscience of the contemporary human spirit. Ultimately, the true foundation of Swift's multi-billion-dollar empire is not just her raw emotion, but the discipline to transform that emotion into high art, and the courage to meet criticism with artistic excellence. With her pen, she has effectively recoded the language of a generation, proving that vulnerability, when mastered, can be the most powerful cultural and economic leverage. This is a story of triumph, demonstrating that pain is never wasted. When meticulously crafted, it can be forged into an immortal commercial and artistic asset,